Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby BABB. Today it is a slightly different episode and one I'm really excited about. Really excited because Thursday the 24th of March we have the FIX EMEA Trading Conference, and it's the first time that everyone has been back together now for over 2 years, an in-person event, and it's got an absolutely wonderful cast and over 600 people expected to come back in London for something I think everyone is very excited about. During that, we've got numerous different panels and speakers throughout the day. I'm delighted to bring two of them from what is hotly described as one of the best panels on the day here for you today. We have Dr. Robert Barnes and Rachel Przybylski. How are you both?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. Listen, let's have an introduction. Robert, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we kick off?
Well, how do you do? My name is Dr. Robert Barnes. I'm the Group Head of Securities Trading and the CEO of Turquoise Global Holdings at London Stock Exchange Group.
Fantastic. And Rachel, over to you.
So yeah, I'm Rachel Przybylski. I'm Head of Regulatory Data Quality Assurance for the Trading Platforms team at Man Group.
Fantastic. Listen, it's wonderful to see you both. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person on Thursday. It's been a while for both of you. Robert, I'm going to come to you first. Tell us a little bit about this panel, and I know how passionate you are about it. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about, who you've got on it, and what we can expect.
Well, thank you very much. So we are going to be speaking about the next generation, the face of the future workforce, but it's really about the entire community that'll be joining us in the audience, thinking about what are we doing in standards to scale our capital markets business, and who will be the leaders of the future to take us forward. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. And Rachel, I know you're being hotly seen as one of those future leaders of the industry. Tell us about what it means for you to be involved.
Well, thank you. I'm really pleased that I joined the FIX Next Gen committee, which is who you'll see speaking on Thursday. I'm really passionate about not only doing my individual job, but actually forwarding our industry for the future generation. So I was really pleased to join and get involved in a lot of the initiatives that FIX Next Gen committee are running.
And there's a lot to talk about in this and to unpack in the whole concept of human capital and capital markets, because I think as the world continues to electronify and people talk about the march of the robots, etc., human capital remains sacrosanct to I think the future of what things look like. This whole conference I think has got a forward-looking focus to it. We're looking at the future. That's where a lot of the themes of the panels are going through. And I think when people immediately think of the future, they sort of downgrade the human element of it. Robert, I know you're quite passionate about why this is why it's important to focus on the human side. What can we expect to be unpacking on Thursday around that sort of subject?
Well, we think about firstly the importance of the fixed trading community, industry-driven, independent, neutral, trying to come up with standards to enable us to scale the business and capital markets. So when we think about capital markets, we're thinking about the importance of bringing the supply and demand of capital together, not just in primary markets, but particularly in the ability to buy and sell once instruments become available. And this is increasingly cross-asset, equities, fixed income, and currencies. So when we think about the humans involved, we need to think about how do we create a standard. A standard requires legitimacy and authority, and much of the authority in our highly regulated capital markets comes from regulators themselves. And we thank the regulators because they provide the framework within which we can behave as entrepreneurs. And it requires the individuals that are in our community, our fixed trading community, to come up and figure out what can be the standards to help us solve the problems to make capital markets more efficient. Now, the big demographic dynamic we face today is that people are getting older and living longer, and that's a good thing. But with the increasing reliance on direct contribution pensions, that means we have an opportunity in an increasingly electronic trading world to focus on innovations that bring efficiency to reduce the slippage cost to allow the compounding towards that long-term financial health that is required. And what we need is today to be looking for those future leaders to be coming up with those innovations and take us into the future. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that, isn't it? And that investment into people is becoming more and more difficult in this industry as we've seen the rise of digital services outside. I go back, I've said this on this show before, 22 years to when I first moved into the industry, and it was if you're a technologist and you wanted to work in the best space in the sector, it would automatically be financial services. My view is that remains the case. Where I think the most interesting projects are in the sector, but we see the march of Silicon Valley, we see the march of the digital revolution outside of the space, and there's some really interesting projects and solutions that are being solved outside. Rachel, I know one of the areas you guys are going to cover is how financial services continues to compete to attract the best talent to it with so much interest outside the space now at the same sort of time. Give us a sneak peek as to some of the things you expect to be talking about with that.
I think, the main themes that we're going to discuss are, how firms and future leaders consider things like diversity, well-being, and again, all of those things are going to play into competing with other industries for talent. The pandemic has obviously brought this all to the forefront, and we now have to use that momentum and really drive forward the future of our organizations. Like I said, you can't just sit there doing your day job. You need to start being someone that puts their hand up and say, okay, if I want to shape who's going to work for me and who's going to work for them next, and how I make the environment that they come to working the best it possibly can be, I think we have to take the momentum we've got now and really run with it. I mean, most firms obviously are implementing lots of diversity, equity and inclusion programs, and have all sorts of things running that will improve that. But as I said, now is the time, I think, to make the most of those, and every single type of firm in our industry needs to be focused on that.
Yeah, and I think there's I was speaking to Nadia, our Chief Customer Officer, who's recently written a book. You might be able to see it just over my shoulder there, with regards to exactly that same subject. And I think it's fascinating. She's interviewed over 150 people in the sector, and I think there's improvement. There's still a long way to go around that whole concept of increasing the diversity and increasing the people who are interested in this space. So I think that's a fascinating area to discover. And also it's then the changing aspects and the changing expectations of the workforce, and what companies and what leadership teams can do to inspire that next generation. Robert, what are some of the areas that you're going to be looking at there?
Well, firstly, I think we realize there's an enormous amount of choice in the value chain. We have the buy-side asset managers, we have the sell-side brokers and banks serving them, we have the market operators, but we also have all the innovators, whether they're from Silicon Valley or here in the City of London. And the human capital is so important because the individuals are personifying the principles with which we come together. Principles like integrity, innovation, partnership, excellence. And when the value chain is operating well together, it's operating through a series of organizations. But the organizations themselves have a human condition. And I think the points that Rachel mentioned are very important. Not only do we need to have diversity to build new thoughts, to help us to innovate, but we also need to encourage the individuals within the organizations to put their hands up and say, yes, I want to be part of a community that's going to promote the best standards, that's going to enable us to scale our business. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's that community aspect, I think, is so important and vital to to the growth of it, which is why I've always admired FIX and everything that's happened. So it's not just a sort of area of the sector, but it's always been a very much a community. And I think those sort of skills of networking, of collaboration, of partnership have become more and more of the sort of buzzwords that we've seen. Certainly over the last 5 years, I think in particular, collaboration has been at the core of success within financial services. Rachel, when we look at the future workforce and we look at the skills which have been set there to allow people to flourish, I know you're going to be talking about this as well, so I don't want to give everything away but before Thursday's conversation. But tell us about some of the things that you think people are going to need to be equipped with to really fly forward as well.
Well, I think it all starts with education, and the younger that we can educate people, the better. I mean, I kind of fell into this industry, and I think that that's almost a bit of a shame, because I would like for more young people to know that our industry exists, what it involves, the different types of roles, and why it's important to be part of it. So I think for me, that's like one of my key areas that I'll discuss, and I think the rest of the panel agree with that. And obviously that means you want to bring people in and think about what they want in that generation. Because, yes, okay, you could say that I'm one of the future leaders, but I am not the generation that I need to focus on. I need to focus on the younger people and how they want to do their job. What is it I need to give them to be able to think, to be creative? Because that may be very different to what I grew up, understanding about the world. And, I guess Robert can say the same. It's really thinking about things from somebody else's perspective and working out what we need to do.
Yeah, I think that's so important, isn't it? I think it's a traditional industry. It always has been a very traditional industry, and it's looked through things there, which I think has allowed it sometimes to be, overtaken in certain areas of innovation. And actually, this is just my view, but the last 2 years have actually put a bit of fuel on the bonfire of innovation in this space, and allowed it to digitalize and allowed us to look at things and say, right, how can we improve the future of it? Which is why I love the theme of this event and this conference, really looking forward rather than backwards around it, and seeing how much opportunity there is. Talking about the event and what we can look forward to. Robert, tell us some of the highlights that you're looking forward to, why it's great to be back, and what you're looking forward to on Thursday.
Well, obviously, the ability to interact with others, to network, to share insights that are relevant, that is value add. And we're going to be blessed with some of the brightest brains on the panel, as well as some of the great thought leaders in our industry in the audience, communicating together, talking about the state of the art and where we can go next. Thank you.
That sounds like a high praise indeed, and well worth coming on to. Rachel, what about yourself? It's been a couple of years since we've been at one of these sort of events. What's exciting you about? What's driving you towards the conference on Thursday?
I think it is just seeing people, in real life, catching up with all the people that you haven't seen over the last few years. And again, the whole point of this is, hopefully meeting some of those younger people who are up and coming, and then we can, really have some interesting conversations. I do hope there are some next gen people in the audience on Thursday. So I would just say, if you're coming on Thursday and you are not from the next gen, please bring someone with you that is, because I would really love for the younger people in our industry to see what's happening and meet all of those people that they may not have ever networked with before.
Yeah, I think that's so important, isn't it? I mentioned to Amy before we got onto this call that I think I first came probably about 8-9 years ago to one of these events, and there's obviously the faces that you'll see, and it's great to reconnect with it, but it's also great to see newer people coming into it and seeing a different showcase of it. So look, whether it's absolutely, as you say, people who are coming and bringing someone from the next generation in would be great, but it's also people from the next generation. Look it up, get involved. We'll put the link into it to this video as well, and it's going to be great just to see more faces and new faces at the event.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I will look forward to seeing you on Thursday. We can't wait to be there in person. We'll be doing a couple of videos, I'm sure, during the session itself too. To Robert, to Rachel, thank you so much for sharing the insight. It sounds like a fascinating panel. I'm going to be their front seat, so I'm looking forward to taking loads of notes and seeing what we can learn from it, and maybe we can catch up afterwards and talk about it in more detail. But a fascinating conversation. One I think is so important. It's my passion. It's something I love. It's something I think about every single day, about how we can improve the accessibility of the industry, about how we can improve the human capital in the space, and why it's so important to the future of everything else. So Rachel, Robert, thanks so much for giving us that insight, and I'll look forward to hearing it in person on Thursday the 24th in London for the EMEA Trading Conference. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Toby.
See you there. Thanks very much. Bye for now.